All right. Looks like we're recording. Cool. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to March 16th MakerDAO community call. Today's community call was actually converted to a also a community call, but it's part of a larger series that we've been running at MakerDAO for the last couple months, and it is part of the Core Unit Tools series. And if you've been following Maker, you will know that basically this whole last I don't know, I'd say since New Year, we've been, going through a transitionary period. Juan and a number of others introduced, the core unit MIP set, which introduces a framework for independent teams to be able to propose themselves, get funding, and do work to serve MakerDAO. And so we've already had a number of these core units actually be ratified. I think last month's governance cycle ratified the three of the first core units. And with all of these independent teams, they all need like some basic services, basic tools, and other teams that come after them are going to have similar needs. So we're putting together this this community call series, the core unit tool series, to kind of cover the different options and the different interesting offerings that are available to core units. And today we have Dennis Lund from AccountAble. I believe it is a company based in Denmark or Copenhagen.
No, we're actually in the Philippines.
Ah, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna give it over to you, Dennis, and yeah, feel free to introduce yourself, the company, and kind of how you see the company working with core units at MakerDAO.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, and thank you for having me on this call. I'm quite excited to introduce Accountable and our services to the community. Again, for those who didn't get a chance to hear the presentation last time. So shortly, I'm from Accountable. We do accounting mainly for cryptocurrency companies. We've been doing the accounting for the Maker Foundations for a few years now. We started in Denmark. So originally, Accountable was a Danish company, but now we decided to work out of the Philippines instead. So we're based in Cebu City. We are a small team right now. We are 5 employees working full time for the Maker Foundation and hoping to be able to assist some of the core units that are going to start operating hopefully soon. So if it's okay with you, I would like to share my screen and do a small presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. So I hope you see my screen by now. If not, then please shout.
Yes.
Your thumbs up, thank you. So we've identified a few issues that we could see for the domain teams. I call it domain teams, basically the same as core units, in order to have their business run. So some core units might want to find out if they have to incorporate themselves in order to operate as core units. In the case that they would want to have employees do payments to external contractors, meaning they would have to have a corporate bank account, pay taxes, be liable, do their accounting, deal with fiat, all of these issues. I've been doing accounting for many years. I know many of these issues, and I also know that it might not be the most interesting thing to deal with for core units or people who would rather dedicate themselves to their own business, doing smart contracts or integrations, business development, or whatever. They might want to stay clear of all of this. So we've come up with a product that we hope will be able to help ease the burden of all of this. So how are we going to service a domain team or a core unit? So basically, we have a legal entity here in the Philippines that can act as the legal counterpoint for any supplier, employee, or contractor, meaning that if your core unit does not want to incorporate and set up a corporation and deal with the bylaws, articles of incorporation, Securities and Exchange Commission, and what have you, you can actually use our legal entity instead. So basically, we will be your legal entity. We'll pay the employees you might want to onboard. We'll take care of having them enrolled in payroll, no matter what country you're in, almost. We have a good relationship with what's called a PEO. It's a professional employer organization that enables us to put people on payroll and make sure that you are compliant when it comes to withholding taxes, paying benefits, having the mandatory employer insurances wherever you are. We accept DAI for payment, of course. So whatever DAI you get from the community, you can have it sent to us and we'll take care of converting it into fiat and pay your suppliers and your employees. We can also help you getting debit and credit cards for your running subscriptions in case you want to, have a Google subscription or whatever. We can provide you with a debit card. So any expense that you choose to have us do for you, be it contractor payments, supplier payments, payroll, we'll provide you with a monthly overview. So you have an idea of your expenses. We'll pay your suppliers in any currency, including crypto, if you like. Of course, probably it would make sense for you to, for a core unit to do their crypto payments themselves, but and it's not all or nothing. You can choose to have something going through us, and some you can take care of yourself absolutely as you would like. And we'll do the payroll again according to your wishes. We can also do payroll in DAI, in Bitcoin, in Ether, whatever you want. We've tried that before in different jurisdictions. We've done it in Denmark, we've done it in the US, actually having people get paid in DAI. That might even be beneficial to some people. If you are living in Argentine, for example, you would probably prefer to get your pay in stable coins, and we can definitely help you address those issues. So for other services, we establish new entities or we use our existing corporation. Right now, we're using our existing corporation here in the Philippines to handle all the compliance matters. We've, of course, set up here and have had great advice from our lawyer and our auditors here to make sure that everything is compliant. We have bank accounts already, and we are basically ready to go. We maintain fiat bank accounts to pay you, your employees, suppliers. We have multi-sig wallets to pay in crypto, and we also already have credit cards that are able to be used. So how does it work? Basically, you get your DAI payment from the community. You can either have that sent straight to us, or you can put it in your own multi-sig wallet and send it to us as we go along. And then we'll turn that DAI into fiat and cover the employee costs, benefits, suppliers, and contractors. We'll take care of establishing the relationship with the professional employer organization, so you are enabled to hire employees worldwide with salaries, withholding taxes, and so on taken care of. So you find the people, and we'll help onboard them. The fine print. So obviously our service is not free of charge. So in order to keep it simple, we will add 10% on top of any expense that you choose to have run through our setup. So for example, if you ask us to pay $1,000 to a contractor, then we will charge you $1,100 for that. So it's a flat 10% on top. And there's no minimum, there's no maximum. If all you choose to do is to have your monthly Google subscription of $20 going through us, that's fine. We'll charge you $2 for that a month, just to keep it simple. It might change along the way, but for now, we just want to keep it very simple. Then for any obligation that we have to sign on your behalf with employees or contractors, if there is a term in the contract where we would be liable to cover, let's say, a 3-month period, then we would ask you to make a deposit with us to cover that 3-month period so that we are indemnified towards that liability. And of course, if you need us to, we'll sign and honor any non-disclosure agreement as you would need. Yeah, that's basically it. I don't want to go into too many details because I don't want to be too boring. Anyone who would like to is more than welcome to reach out to us on Rocket Chat, Telegram, whatever, email. I think David posted our website in the post. and you're more than welcome to reach out to me. And I love doing personal one-on-one meetings with people. Also, we've already helped a few core units go over their budgets and doing initial talks. We are more than willing to help. And anything leading up to an actual agreement with us will be free of charge. So we don't charge for helping you with your budgets prior to submitting them to the community. We love the community and we love to help. So anyone has a question for me?
Yeah, I have a couple. So there's this idea of like full versus limited service, right? So you can either, as a core unit, you could either completely rely on your entity, do all your payroll, all your expenses, get the credit, get whatever payment cards you need through your entity, and all of that goes through like that 10% service charge. But then I'm curious about what your offerings are for the limited service. So let's say, for example, we decide, core unit decides to incorporate ourselves. So we're using our own entity, and like for example, we're using Opolis for payroll, and really the only thing we're looking for is help with number one, accounting, uh, and then and I guess accounting, by extension taxes, and then number three, DAI to fiat conversion. So uh
Yes.
even so I'm curious about what offerings there are on the limited side rather than the full service side.
So obviously, we've been providing those services to the foundation, and we can certainly provide those services at a limited company in the States. We can do the accounting for any local compliance matters for your filings of your corporate taxes. You would need a local partner for that if you choose to incorporate in the state.
Can you say that one more time? It just come off a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm saying for any local compliance. So when you need to file your taxes in the US, that's not really what we do. We cannot help you with that. You would
Got
need a
it.
local to take care of that. For the accounting, absolutely, we can do it. And of course, we are familiar with crypto accounting. You might have a hard time finding an accountant in the US who's familiar with that. So that would be a different price, of course, because that's not really servicing a core unit. So that's a completely different setup. You would have your own bank account. You would, if you use Oculus, then you would have yourself employed in Oculus. They would take care of filing your employee taxes.
Right.
So the accounting side for any suppliers and contractor invoices, yes, we can definitely keep track of that in the accounting. That's more of a traditional accounting setup. So we absolutely do that, and the price it would not be 10%. But just bear in mind that 10% might sound like a lot, but if you compare it to the costs of operating, having lawyers, having auditors, having to pay corporate taxes, having mandatory insurance, it gets pretty expensive pretty fast.
Yeah.
And of course, if you at one point, let's say you lose your grant from the community, then you would have to bear the cost of dissolving that corporation that you set up. And that's usually even more expensive than establishing it. I can definitely see why some would choose to incorporate, but I think for some core units, it would make more sense not to have a legal entity.
Yeah, that's really, really good commentary. And I was going to ask about that, what you thought the trade-offs were between incorporating and not incorporating, and that sounds like that's really good information. Yeah, cool. If assuming like a full service setup through AccountAble, what is the requirement for paying out, freelancers that work part-time in DAI? Like, do they have to go through the whole KYC, everything, or can they be on their own, and can we just like independently pay them with DAI and let them worry about their own
They
side of taxes and stuff?
They can be, so they would have to issue an invoice to AccountAble in the Philippines.
Hmm.
We would have to check that it's compliant in the country where they are, because in some countries you actually cannot just do that. In some countries you absolutely just can. So we would check that just for compliance. And if it's okay and compliant, then we have no problem doing that. And the Philippine laws are not that strict on KYC. I spoke to our auditor here last week, and she said Of course, you need to have names and addresses of people, but you're not really, you don't have to do the strict KYC on them. So.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Cool. And by the way, I just want to open it up to anybody who's on the call. Feel free to ask any questions that come to mind. Dennis is here for all of us, and so yeah, definitely don't be shy. I will do my best to keep coming up with questions though. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I guess one thing, how much does it complicate it from your end? Let's say you're just a contributor here to Maker, so maybe you're working for like 3 or 4 different core units. I guess, does that mess up any of the extra steps for the user end?
No, I don't see why it would.
Awesome.
Hey Dennis, you said you've been doing this for the Maker Foundation. That's my first question. And the second question is, hypothetically, somebody started, I think someone's already doing this, but imagine somebody starts a core unit for, I'm going to make it simple, selling t-shirts, and they need to go to an event, and the event organizer says, hey, I need you to fill out this form, and you need to put an organization. Would the person then put core unit t-shirts, or would they put the name of AccountAble as the entity, or would they put MakerDAO as the entity that's responsible for anything that goes wrong at the meetup? Hopefully that makes sense.
For any legal matters where you would need a corporation to sign on your behalf, that would be us. Of course, there are limits to what we can take upon us as in regards to liability, but certainly for paying the fee or whatever that's associated with that, we would be able to sign that contract. And they can put whatever they want on the t-shirt. I'm not really going to get into that, as long as it's in agreement, of course, with the organizers of that event.
Got it. And you mentioned you've been doing this already for the foundation?
Yes, we've been doing the accounting for the foundation. So of course, the foundation is a centralized thing. They have legal entities. So that's basically been a bit more old school accounting. That's what I've been doing for a lot of years now. And I don't really think that anyone has been servicing decentralized core units in the way that we are going to do.
Got it. And at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, you would send out in the US as an example, I'm not sure what they call it in Europe or in Asia, but you would send a W-2 to every core unit employee? Yeah.
Yes, so for any employee that's on payroll, we have the agreement with the professional employer organization that have local entities around the world. So in case you have employees in the US, they would sign an employment contract with the PEO, the professional employer organization, and they will take care of your W-2s and any other reporting matters to make sure that everything is compliant. It's not too difficult with the US. It gets more difficult when you get to countries like Norway or France or whatever, where they have a lot of extra mandatory contributions you have to make. But in order to make sure that that is compliant, we use the services of the PEO.
Understood. And in one of your slides, you had you showed where the community pays out to the core unit employee, right? And you mentioned you can either use multi-sig or you can go directly from your wallet to AccountAble. But wouldn't that in the US, I mean, in the US, it would incur a tax event, a taxable event. So you're saying that a multi-sig would be a better way. Just trying to get my head around that.
Sure. So in that case, to get around ending up being taxable, it would actually be better to have all of it sent to AccountAble so that it never hits your wallet, so that you never own it and never become taxable for it.
Okay, cool. So there is a way to do it now. Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions right now. Thank you.
I have a question. Just kind of curious, maybe outside of Maker, what kind of transparency do your clients expect? Have you have any particularly weird requests to make sure all of your paperwork is kind of visible to everyone, or are they kind of standard across all the clients?
Well, of course, what we provide is transparency. So we will be able to account for every single die that you send to us, where it is, what it's been spent on. We'll send you a P&L every month to see how you've been spending your die and where the funds are. So we provide absolute transparency. Of course, we only provide that to you as a client and not to everyone else, because that's, of course, a confidentiality matter between us and the client. And then the client, of course, can choose to make it public and share it with anyone they want to. So that's what we do as accountants. We keep track of things, and we provide you with the transparency of every die that you ever send to us.
Cool, thanks.
In what cases would you say that it makes sense to actually incorporate as a core unit rather than use you directly?
Well, if you expect to be around for, let's say, more than 10 years, and you expect to have maybe 50 employees, and probably if you expect those employees to be within the same jurisdiction, that would make sense.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great answer.
And what are some of the downsides here, right? And the way I'm thinking out loud here is, hypothetically, AccountAble goes bankrupt, or the Philippines comes in and is like, okay, we can't have companies that do business in crypto anymore. So what are some of those downsides? How would the employees of these core units get paid if things do fall apart?
So the employees would have their official relationship with the local payroll employer organization. We would have paid that PEO a deposit corresponding to the amount that they would need to cover any resignation period in case they got fired. Of course, if something like that happened, you would stop sending your die to AccountAble in the Philippines. Of course you do. And then you would have to find another way of sending the funds to the employees. But they would be good for some time, as their salaries will be covered by the deposit that's with the PEO. And probably we'll have another entity set up in another jurisdiction very fast in case that happens. I don't see why that would happen, but of course it's, as you said, it's hypothetical, but I don't see it. I don't see it happening.
Okay, and just the whole experience of getting your die converted to euros or dollars. How long would it take for an employee of a core unit to get paid? So say hypothetically, the core unit gets approved in the month of April, and then an employee is awaiting their first payment. Does it take forever? Because I've had bad experiences with doing wire transfers where I have to wait, a week, 2, sometimes even 3. So just trying to get an idea what the expectation should be.
So since we're using the POs, the professional employer organization, they have local bank accounts in the countries where the employees are. So it wouldn't take any longer than it would for any other employer to pay out the salary.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to add to that, so to continue on that, I mean, so let's say that we get approved in the May cycle, and we get our die to a multi-sig like end of May, and we send that die to AccountAble, right? So it would be like, yeah, I'm trying to understand, is it like a 2-week thing? Is it a 3-week thing? Is it a 4-week thing?
It depends, of course, on you and where your employees are, because there are different requirements in countries. In some countries, you need to have a notarized contract of employment. So you would have to go see a notary to get that taken care of. In other jurisdictions, in other countries, it's a much smoother process. So it would really depend on the country.
Got it. That makes sense.
I'm sorry, what do you have to get notarized? I missed that part.
Sorry, it's the employment contract.
Oh, okay.
least in the Philippines, if you want to employ someone, you need to go to a notary public and have the give them 5 copies of the contract of employment and have everything notarized and signed by a lawyer. So yeah, processes vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Understood.
And
Go for it, Nadia.
sorry, David. And Dennis, if I receive the budget for salaries and everything else in my multi-sig, and then I send it to you to pay for salaries, what happened with the taxes when I receive that budget in my multi-sig? Because I'm not a company, I'm an individual person who is receiving a bunch of money from a DAO. So what is the procedure there?
So that would depend on the jurisdiction, and I have no idea as to most jurisdictions how they would tax that. I would know certainly from a Danish perspective, you would be taxable to that amount. But if you're going to do that, I would just advise you to really get professional counseling in whatever jurisdiction you are. It's not something that I can give you a guidance on. I'm sorry.
You mentioned a little while ago about a deposit requirement for core units. I'm curious about what that deposit requirement is and yeah, all that.
So say you enter into an agreement with a supplier and that supplier says, okay, we'll enter into an agreement with you, but there will be a fixed term of 3 months, meaning you'll have to give us 3 months notice once you want to end the contract. So if our corporation, AccountAble, has to sign that contract, we will be liable for those 3 months. So if it's a 10 contract, we would be liable for $30,000 in that contract. So we would ask you to deposit the $30,000 with us. In case you lose your grant or you just cut us off or whatever, we'll be able to honor that contract.
So it's 3 months of expenses up front, pretty much.
That depends on the supplier. If it's a supplier that you can end your work with at will, then there'll be no deposit.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So it's only on expenses that require like term agreements.
Yes, and that could be the case for employees, especially in Europe. Some places you might have to give them 4 or 5 months notice. So the PEO, the professional employer organization in that jurisdiction, would ask you to deposit an amount corresponding to 5 months worth of salaries.
That's interesting. Yeah. I see right now, like based on all of the core unit like budget proposals, the only one that I saw that was asking for like 3 months up front was the smart contracts team. And even they would like in the proposal, they said they'd be keeping it in, you know, the mandated actor multi-sig just as like backup. So I'm curious how like core unit budgets will account for like deposit requirements like that, especially for salaries, because that's like the bulk of most core unit expenses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they could of course show you what they're doing with those funds. If you deposit the money with us, we will of course provide transparency to the core unit that we pay to the payroll organization in that jurisdiction. We'll have an invoice and it will say paid.
Yeah.
And you can, I mean, if you don't pay it, then the person will not get on payroll. It's that simple.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So what's the process of if somebody wants to onboard or consult you, kind of what are the steps? And yeah, I'm just curious about the whole onboarding process.
Yeah, so the onboarding process is quite smooth because basically we are dealing with a decentralized unit, a core unit. So who would sign the contract? You really couldn't, because who would be the legal client? So the onboarding process is smooth. We make an agreement, we get the DAI, and we get the process started. So of course there's a process as to hiring employees. We would ask for some bio on those employees to get the contracts of employment process started and everything. But other than that, it's pretty smooth. I mean, you send us some DAI and we use that DAI to pay your suppliers.
Got it. So if let's say a core unit wasn't like passed through governance yet, but they maybe saw a positive result in the first week's poll, and are preparing, they're beginning to figure out if they're going to incorporate it, and they're like actually starting to get set up in anticipation of getting passed. Uh, what what would be like the best thing for a facilitator to do? It would be to reach out to you kind of at the beginning of that governance cycle, uh, or do you recommend even earlier than that?
I recommend even before submitting a MIP that they reach out to us and ask for our help to go over the budget. Because as you said, not too many thought about, okay, we have to pay deposits, we have
Right.
yeah, there are a lot of things that people don't think about when doing budgeting. So just this week, I had one meeting already with a core unit that are about to submit a budget. And we made quite a lot of changes to that budget because there were so many things that they didn't think of. We're able to get that in the budget. So I would suggest way before you submit your MIP, please reach out and we'll help you go over the budget. And there's no liability to you. You don't have to make an agreement with us. That's completely free of charge. But if, of course, later on you want to get onboarded and work with us, we'd be more than happy to do that as well.
Nice.
Hey Dennis, how does it work if say David's core unit hires like a freelancer in Michigan, and their freelancer is only going to do a one-time job, right? They're gonna, I don't know, do a mural or something in the middle of Detroit, and so David has to pay them, $2,000 because they're a great artist. And how long would that artist have to wait to get a payment, right? Because you don't want him calling David like every other day, like, hey, dude, where's my cash? Just trying to get an idea how fast it works when you hire people.
In order to get those people paid?
Yeah, so if you hire just like a freelancer for a one-time event.
So as soon as we get the invoice, we'll do the payment. We are going to have a single point of contact for any core unit, meaning that you wouldn't have to deal with 6 different people. So you will have your own person assigned in our office that will work in a time zone of your choice to assist with this and do a full-time job handling payments and checking invoices and so on. So we'll pay on any weekday. We can do the payments.
Yeah, this is really fantastic. Sorry, go for
David.
it, Frank.
No, I was just gonna say, and does that artist need to provide their identification because you're gonna have to 1099 them? Do you know if how does that work?
We are not required to do the KYC on the customers or the suppliers here.
Okay, cool. That works with me. Thanks.
Nice. I am running fresh out of questions. Yeah, let's give it like a few minutes, see if anybody else has anything. And I'm curious, Dennis, what are kind of like the most common questions that you've had from core units that you've worked with so far?
So far it's been mainly, should I incorporate or not? Because of course, a lot of people are thinking about starting a business, which this basically is. And then they start the traditional way of thinking. Okay, if I'm going to start a business, I'm going to need to incorporate. I'll be the CEO and president of my own corporation, and that's all. It all sounds nice, but people should put more thought into what it actually entails to have a corporation. So think about all the paperwork that you'll have to do. Think about having the bylaws, board of directors, having an auditor, getting your financials audited, submitting your annual report, risk doing mistakes that will end up getting your corporation dissolved. So of course, that's in some jurisdictions, it's quite easy to have a corporation. In some jurisdictions, it's quite difficult. But in any way, if you choose to engage with us, you won't have to do that because we will be your corporation. So that has been something I've spent a lot of time discussing with people. Should they incorporate or not? In some cases, it does make sense. In some cases, it does not make sense. So that has been the main topic. And then of course I've been asked a lot about, so can we, if we have an employee in say Nigeria, can we get that person on payroll? And I would go and I would look it up and I say, get back to you and say, yes, we can have people on payroll in Nigeria. Then I have been asked some questions about how are the services we are offering different to that of Opolis. So basically with Opolis, you would need to incorporate. You don't need to do that with us. Also for Opolis, you kind of, if you want people on payroll, they would each need to have their own corporation. You couldn't hire additional people. So with us, that's not really a problem. So Opolis is great if you're one guy working in the US, wanting to be on payroll yourself. Great service. But if you want to have people in more jurisdictions, then I don't think Opolis would work for you. But they have a great product for people in the US. I have to say, I'm quite impressed with their services. But it's mainly for people in the US. So that has been a topic as well.
Yeah, nice. Those are all questions that I've been personally wondering about since I am one of the people proposing a core unit. And yeah, Opolis and AccountAble are like totally different models. And yeah, a lot of my questions were about, ways to like use both of them, or, like just the different ways that a core unit can approach the structure behind its, infrastructure.
Yeah, and so of course someone asked if they can do 50-50. So say they do want a corporation, but they also do want us to handle some of the crypto accounting and do some payments for suppliers. We can absolutely do that, and it's the same price. There's no premium if you choose only half of the services, so it's still the 10% on top. So that's of course up to you.
Makes
As
sense.
I said, the minimum, if you just want your Google subscription to go through us, fine, we'll charge you $2 a month for that.
Yeah, so speaking of Google subscriptions, can you describe the process of invoicing from vendors? So say hypothetically, you have a vendor who's going to invoice you every month for supplies, etc. Is that an easy process for them? Do they have to just log into a website for AccountAble, put the invoice through, and automatically AccountAble is going to realize that it belongs to the smart contracts team core unit or the whatever core unit? Is that how easy it is? Mm-hmm.
For most suppliers, we just get the invoices by email. So we go through that every day and we pay the invoices. Of course, it has to be approved by the core unit. We're not just paying out stuff at random. So it really has to be approved by the core unit. For crypto payments, you can absolutely send an invoice by email as well and indicate your wallet on that invoice. We have done that before. Or you can use Request Network if you like to do that, and we'll pay it out of there. And as I said, we can do payments on a daily basis. And for any fiat payments, usually it takes 2 to 3 days for our payments that we do here from our bank account here to reach the recipient.
Okay, so basically all the vendor has to do is send an email to an AccountAble AP address, and then you guys determine which core unit it belongs to, and then you take it from their budget and then you pay it out within 2 or 3 days. So it's very simple. It's no need to go through a website, just basic email.
No. So we want to keep it simple because we don't want this to be a burden on the core unit that they would have to log into a system and approve something, and keep it simple. And we have been doing this for many years, and in 95% of the cases, the supplier just submits their invoice by email, or they might send their invoice to the person from the core unit, who would then approve it and forward it to us and say, please pay this ASAP.
But if the smart contract team is doing an audit with Gauntlet and they build them for $100,000 US, you would need an approval. No, isn't there like a threshold of the invoice, the amount of the invoice to be approved by the by the core unit facilitator?
If the core unit, which is our customer, asks us to pay 100K to a supplier, we would do that.
Okay. No, I just meant imagine if somebody is just sending invoices for like $1,000 at a time, you know, trying to take advantage of the situation and just get paid. Is there like a way for you guys to recognize like, hey, there's something going on here?
Of course, we won't pay anything without being sure that it's been approved by the core unit. So we do have steps, two-factor payment systems to make sure that we don't get caught in a scam or in whatever. And we'll be communicating, of course, also with the core unit. If we see something that looks suspicious, we would double check with the core unit, is this for real or not?
Cool. Hey, David, is there going to be like, are core units like yours or anybody else's or Nadia's? Are you guys going to have like a kind of like a viewer where you can see what, you know, how much money you have available and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, that would be cool. I mean, I imagine like if it depends, right? Like it depends on the core unit. It depends on their own individual commitment to like transparency. Like some core units are not going to publish like salary information, for example, while others are. Some might post like their full financials for transparency, others might not. So I think it really depends. And being able to like have an easy view of like the current snapshot of your finances, I think is like might need some additional tool or something, because yeah, that in itself is kind of hard to like present publicly in a way that's like up to date, makes sense.
Yes, yes, same in my case. Like for me, salaries is like something like very difficult to publish because we are not anonymous. We are all like real persons with our names. So I think that that will be like difficult for us to accept to have our salaries online. And also another part of our budget is what we pay for integrations or marketing campaigns. And if we make that information public, that will be like difficult to negotiate with other partner, because if one partner can see what I paid to another one, they will ask for the same. So I mean, I agree with David, transparency is everything, and it's like the big value of the blockchain, but it's very difficult when you have to negotiate and deal with partners.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
also
that makes sense. That makes sense.
like with core units, like there's going to be a level of expected accountability from MKR voters, I assume, when, you know, core units go to renew or modify their budgets. So I think core units are going to be expected to post some level of their finances. Just the level of granularity and like detail is really what seems to be like the preference, the optionality here.
Probably you would submit your total spend on salaries and not the individual salaries that you've been paying out. So of course you're proposing a budget, and you would report your expenses in the same manner, meaning that if you propose a budget where you like spend $1 million on salaries, then you wouldn't list have a list of 20 people and how much they got individually. As you said, Nadia, you are people and you might not want that to be publicly known how much you make. So you would just sum that up in one figure and say, this is what we spend on salaries. This is how we always do accounting. We have what's called a chart of accounts, where you have all your expense accounts, salaries, developers, cars, flight tickets, whatever. And we'll show the amounts according to those categories and not down to the individual expense level. And I would suggest that you do the same for your expenses for the community to do.
Yeah, it sounds like AccountAble is going to be really, really useful for like relatively small core units, because the way that you describe all the responsibilities that a company and corporation Yeah, it does sound like quite a lot, especially like the dissolving part. Like imagine losing your grant and then all of a sudden like you didn't budget for the additional $10,000 of expenses.
Absolutely, for small teams, but also for bigger teams. If you truly want to be a decentralized core unit, meaning that you don't want to have an entity somewhere because maybe you're spread around the globe and it's not really convenient for you to have an entity in the US or in Europe or there. It might be make more sense for you not to have a legal entity.
Right, right. What kind of I know you mentioned there's like a monthly financial report that you produce for the client. Uh, is there, besides that monthly one, what other things should the client expect to like receive from your firm?
So communication whenever you need it. As I said, we are people as well, and we are working here out of the office, and we are online, and we are reachable. So it's not like you're going to have to to go online and create a ticket and wait for someone to get back to you. You will be on Telegram, Rocket Chat, whatever you need with your point of contact here to address your concerns, or you would just call them up on the good old landline.
Landlines. I remember those.
That's quite important for us that we are reachable and that we are not, have 5 different departments that you have to reach out for whatever concern you have, that you have a single point of contact. So basically, what our experience tells us is that people would like to get a monthly overview of their expenses. If you need it on a weekly basis, hey, we'll figure that out. If you need a quarterly report, we'll absolutely provide you with that. Annual reports, we can absolutely do that as well.
Amazing, cool. Yeah, that's really good to know that you're very flexible with regards to client needs. That's great. Cool.
And also, of course, for the balance sheet. So we will be very, upfront on where we keep your assets. So if you send us a deposit that we keep in our wallet because we signed a contract on your behalf, be completely transparent where those funds are. So that's a part of the reporting that we do as well, how we are managing your funds. Because it's your funds, it's not ours.
Hey, Dennis, I'm not sure if you can talk about this, but how do you deal with turning DAI into US dollars or euros? Do you guys have cut a deal with, I don't know if you can tell me this, but have you guys cut a deal with a brokerage company that allows you to not suffer any slippage? So for example, if I'm getting paid 10,000 DAI a month, right? You might suffer some slippage. And is that incurred by the employee? And I know you guys take 10%, which like you said is fair because you're not going through the whole incorporations, lawyers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but how do you deal with that? With also the possibility of DAI losing its peg, right? How do you deal with all that if you're allowed to talk about it?
I'll say that we have a good deal with someone able to help us liquidate our DAI, and we have the setup ready already.
Okay, so does the employee not have to worry about slippage and losing the peg?
If everyone will have to worry about the losing the peg, right? That's not just us.
Okay, but on the slippage, you are saving the employees a couple of cents and dollars here and there.
If you want to pay your employee 1,000 DAI, they will receive 1,000 DAI.
Right, but you got to pay 10%, no?
Yeah. So they'll pay us. You'll pay us 10%, and we'll make sure that the employee gets 1,000 DAI.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. And so with the vendor, right? If a vendor does a service, they'll get the $1,000 or €1,000. Cool.
Absolutely.
That's cool. Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
I guess if the employee has a salary of $10,000, you will have to pay Dennis whatever the conversion rate is at the day he he's converting the DAI into dollars. Well, that's my guess, no?
I'm not sure I got the question. Could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, like if I have to pay to an employee $10,000 because in the contract the salary is by $10,000, you will have to see the conversion rate depending on the date. You will like talk with your broker to understand how many dies do I have to give to you so the employee can get the $10,000. Like I'm assuming you're not like paying, you're not losing money in the transaction is what I mean. You're just like converting my the DAI of the budget I have into dollars, and the employee has to receive $10,000 because that's what his or her contract says, right?
Yes. So when you pay the employee, basically we'll get an invoice from the PEO, and that invoice will charge 10% of top up and ask you to pay. That's how it would work. Of course, since your grant isn't live, if you have people working in other jurisdictions, receiving other currencies, there might be some exchange rate fluctuation over time that would change the cost. But that could go, up or down.
I mean, like going to Frank's question about losing the peg. If DAI is under $1, one DAI is under $1, and at the moment you negotiate the conversion rate with the broker, well, he will give you like a non-expected price for the budget I have for the salary. So I have to have like an extra budget just in case that happens, because I will have to pay you more DAI, so the employee at the end could get the 10,000 DAI just in case the peg is broken.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be thousands of dollars going into that, that we'll lose that way. So we'll consider that as a kind of like a bank fee or whatever, and that's included in the 10% that we charge.
Okay.
Hey, Dennis, would it be possible to that MakerDAO as an entire protocol gets a discount one day? So right now you're charging 10%, but can we get that down to like 5% if we, give you a lot of business and everything runs smoothly, you're doing a great job, we're bringing in a lot of business to you, you're collecting a lot of fees, maybe we could get down to 5%? Is that something maybe you can see happening over the next 24 months?
Short answer, yes.
Awesome.
But,
okay,
but
for
now, since we haven't onboarded anyone, we are stuck at the 10%. But of course, the more people that are going to come on, the more efficient we can be. We get the economies of scale going. Sure, we can lower the prices.
It's good to hear. Good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're coming up on the last 4 minutes of the call until we get to the top of the hour. So yeah, if you have any important questions you've been holding back, now is the time. And thank you for those of you that are here, because you guys have all, and gals, have asked some really great questions. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say we really appreciate you doing this extended session for us, because yeah, it's obviously a pretty big moment of translation for us, and having you around and just all your knowledge and services there is gonna be huge. So thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, you're all more than welcome to reach out on Rocket Chat, email, whatever. You can visit accountable.dk. You'll find my contact info in there, and feel free to reach out if you want to do a one-on-one. I'm absolutely available for that. Just let me know.
Yeah, some of the major things I learned from the session are number one, that we get like a point person full, we get like really great service from you guys. I also learned that there's the option of not incorporating at all, Because I was under the impression that you'd have to incorporate one way or another, unless you just take DAI and pay everything out in DAI and just like remain not like operating in like this weird gray space. But yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of really great details that came out of the session. So thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you. Yeah, as you say, many people are quite focused on the need to incorporate because business is thought of in a very traditional way. But
Right.
I believe in the future being more decentralized, and we'll see more decentralized teams out there, not having a legal entity, but still functioning as a business. But whenever they need to have a bridge into the centralized world, having to pay Google or another contractor that you can only deal with in the centralized space, you will have providers like us that can help you be that bridge into the centralized world.
Very nice. Cool. Well then, all right. It looks like there's silence and about 2 minutes left. So yeah, I think we're gonna call it here. Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you for presenting AccountAble to us. And yeah, I definitely look forward to seeing more of you around. And I hope people take advantage of your service.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on the call.
Right on. Cheers.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Thank you, Dennis.